You've felt it before. That surge of rage towards someone you love that seems to come from nowhere. The flash of envy that makes you secretly hope a friend fails. The attraction that threatens your committed relationship. The cruel thought you'd never speak aloud. These moments feel alien to your sense of self, intrusions from somewhere else, someone else. So you push them back down, deny them, lock them away where no one, not even you, has to acknowledge their existence. But Carl Jung, one of history's greatest psychological minds, understood something profound about this pattern. He issued a warning that echoes across a century. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. Carl Jung. This insight reveals a fundamental truth about human psychology. What you resist persists. What you refuse to see controls what you do. What if the parts of yourself you've rejected aren't defects to be eliminated? What if they're disowned aspects of your wholeness, demanding integration? What if the shadow you're hiding from is actually hiding the key to your liberation? We've built entire identities around being good people. Spiritual, but not dogmatic. Conscious, but not judgmental. Ambitious, but not greedy. Confident, but not arrogant. Yet in this meticulous curation of acceptable traits, we've created internal shadowlands. Here, the disowned parts of ourselves grow stronger in the dark. Think of your shadow as a locked room in the house of your psyche. You pass by this door every day, pretending it isn't there. Sometimes you hear sounds from behind it, whispers of anger, desire, ambition, or fear. But rather than use the key you've always had, you've convinced yourself the door is better left unopened. Jung's revolutionary insight wasn't that we all have a dark side. It was that the more fiercely we deny it, the more powerfully it operates through us. It emerges as compulsions, projections, self-sabotage. These patterns seem to happen to us rather than through us. The shadow isn't what's darkest in you. It's what you keep in the dark. This explains the confounding patterns in your life. Why you're repeatedly drawn to people who hurt you in the same way. Why you judge most harshly in others exactly what you can't accept in yourself. Why your conscious intentions and unconscious behaviors sometimes operate in perfect opposition. The most unsettling truth? The shadow isn't something that invades your psyche from outside. It's composed of natural human qualities and potentials. These were simply deemed too dangerous, shameful, or contradictory to your conscious identity early in life. And here's the paradox that Jung understood. The qualities you most need to become whole are often hiding in the shadow, wrapped in the very aspects of yourself you've been taught to reject. Jung's concept of the shadow emerged from a profound understanding of the psyche as naturally whole, yet culturally fragmented. He saw that humans universally disown certain qualities to maintain belonging within their social groups, a process that begins in childhood and continues throughout life. The shadow isn't inherently negative. It contains not only your darker impulses like aggression, selfishness, or lust. It also holds positive qualities that didn't fit your family or cultural narrative. Creativity in pragmatic environments, sensitivity in stoic ones, ambition in humble ones. Jung discovered a fundamental psychological law that governs this process. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. Carl Jung. Jung wasn't merely offering psychological theory. He was describing the fundamental mechanism by which our disowned qualities control our lives from the shadows of awareness. He observed that this shadow material accumulates power when denied. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Carl Jung. Shadow integration. Jung identified a critical distinction between unconscious shadow material and conscious shadow integration. When unconscious, the shadow operates through projection, seeing in others what we can't accept in ourselves. It works through compulsion, driving us by forces we neither understand nor control. Individuation, the process of becoming whole. But when consciously integrated, these same energies become available as wisdom, creative power, and authentic selfhood. This is the heart of what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole. This insight led Jung to a profound realization about consciousness and enlightenment. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Jung. The ultimate goal isn't eliminating the shadow, an impossible task. It's developing a conscious relationship with it. Only when you can acknowledge and understand your shadow aspects can you gain choice over how their energies are expressed in your life. And here's where modern neuroscience gets fascinating. It's actually proving what Jung discovered over a century ago. Lane and Schwartz, consciousness and cognition. Studies on emotional suppression support Jung's claim that what is not made conscious is experienced as fate. Research shows that suppressed emotions create physiological stress and emerge in maladaptive forms, exactly as Jung described shadow material. When we deny aspects of ourselves, our brains literally work harder to maintain the suppression. This creates chronic stress patterns, and ironically, makes the suppressed material more likely to emerge unconsciously. The science is increasingly clear. Jung's understanding of the shadow wasn't merely philosophical. It describes actual neurological processes that powerfully influence our lives whether we recognize them or not. You judge in others exactly what you repress in yourself. I can't stand how attention-seeking they are. You find yourself repeating patterns you consciously despise. Why do I keep ending up with partners who control me? You experience emotional reactions vastly disproportionate to triggering events. I don't understand why such a small comment made me so angry. Multiple projection studies. Research reveals a striking pattern. The qualities we most strongly reject in ourselves are precisely those we're quickest to identify and judge in others. A perfect example of shadow material operating outside awareness. The most painful truth? Your shadow doesn't just influence your life. It often runs it. The relationships you're drawn to, the conflicts you repeatedly experience, the limits on your achievement or happiness. Many stem from shadow material operating outside your awareness. The fiercer your conscious rejection of certain qualities, the more powerfully they operate unconsciously. What if the question isn't, how can I be free of my shadow? But what is my shadow trying to show me about myself that I've been unwilling to see? You've tried focusing only on the positive, affirming your way to wholeness, rejecting the negative in favor of the light. Yet the shadow remains. It shows itself in your relationships, your dreams, your inexplicable behaviors and reactions. What if sustainable transformation isn't about eliminating darkness? What if it's about developing a relationship with it that allows its energy to fuel your growth rather than sabotage it? But you might be thinking, isn't it dangerous to explore our darker impulses? Won't acknowledging my shadow make me more likely to act on it? This concern reflects our cultural conditioning that equates awareness with approval. But Jung's insight was precisely the opposite. Kawai, Journal of Analytical Psychology. Research confirms that working with the shadow, bringing disowned aspects of the self into awareness, fosters psychological growth and resilience rather than destructive behavior. He understood that consciousness itself requires courage. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung. It's unconscious shadow material that emerges uncontrollably in regrettable moments. Conscious awareness creates choice where none existed before. Integration doesn't mean acting on every impulse. It means having the freedom to choose your response rather than being driven by unconscious forces. Or perhaps you're thinking, I've worked hard to become who I am. Why should I reconnect with parts of myself I've deliberately left behind? This reflects a misunderstanding of what shadow integration means. Integration isn't regressing to instinctual behavior or abandoning your values. It's reclaiming the energy and authenticity that get lost when large portions of your psyche remain unconscious. Jung recognized the challenge of complete self-acceptance. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. What if conscious engagement with your shadow doesn't make you worse, but more authentic, more effective, and paradoxically, more aligned with your deepest values? What if the very parts you fear most contain precisely the energy you need to become more fully yourself? The most liberating insight may be this: the shadow isn't your enemy. It's simply the parts of your human inheritance waiting to be acknowledged, understood, and consciously integrated into your whole self. You stand now at a decisive crossroads in your relationship with your own wholeness. Path 1. You continue to identify solely with your conscious self-concept, rejecting or denying the shadow aspects that don't fit this image. Temporarily, this maintains your sense of being good, or spiritual, or enlightened. But over time, the disowned energy accumulates power in your unconscious. It emerges as projection, seeing in others what you can't acknowledge in yourself. It manifests as self-sabotage, unconsciously creating situations that undermine your conscious goals. It erupts as disproportionate emotional reactions that seem to come from nowhere. Your life increasingly feels like something happening to you rather than through you. Path 2. You begin the challenging but liberating process of shadow integration. You acknowledge the full spectrum of human qualities within you without necessarily acting on them. Shadow integration studies. Studies show that bringing disowned aspects of the self into conscious awareness leads to significant psychological growth and resilience. You recognize your projections as valuable information about your own psyche. You develop compassion for the parts of yourself that were rejected or shamed. You reclaim the energy that was locked in maintaining the split between acceptable and unacceptable aspects of yourself. Gradually, you become more whole, more authentic, more effective, and paradoxically, more capable of embodying your highest values, not through repression, but through conscious choice. The second path isn't easy. It requires uncomfortable honesty, courage to face what you've denied, and willingness to update your self-concept. But it offers something the first path never can: freedom from unconscious compulsion and access to your full human capacities. Jung captured this profound truth about self-awareness. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Carl Jung. Jung's exploration of thousands of patients led him to a profound conclusion. Those who develop a conscious relationship with their shadow don't become worse people. They become more whole, more effective, and more genuinely aligned with their values than those who maintain the illusion of being only their best qualities. This understanding led to one of his most important insights about wholeness. Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. Jung. The difference between these paths isn't whether the shadow exists in your life. It's whether you'll relate to it consciously, with choice and wisdom, or remain unconsciously driven by the very forces you've tried to disown. Let's move beyond insight into action with 3 evidence-based practices for beginning the process of shadow integration. Practice 1. Trigger tracking. Your emotional triggers provide a map to your shadow. Whenever you experience a reaction that seems disproportionate to the situation, your shadow is likely involved. Here's how to start. 1. Maintain trigger journal. For 1 week, maintain a trigger journal. 2. Note reaction details. When you experience a strong emotional reaction, note what happened, how you felt, and most importantly, what quality in the other person provoked your response. 3. Ask the shadow question. For each trigger, ask, how might this quality exist in me in a way I haven't acknowledged? This practice begins to illuminate your specific shadow material through your projections onto others. Practice 2. Shadow dialogue. Once you've identified shadow content, developing a relationship with it transforms its expression from unconscious to conscious. Here's how to try this. 1. Choose shadow quality. Choose one shadow quality you've identified. 2. Set up dialogue space. Set aside 20 minutes in a private space for a written dialogue. 3. Begin the conversation. Begin by addressing the quality. I notice I've been rejecting quality in myself. Then allow that aspect to respond by writing from its perspective. 4. Ask integration questions. Ask what it wants, why it's present, and what it might offer if consciously integrated. The goal isn't indulgence, but understanding its authentic role in your wholeness. Practice 3. Conscious expression. Shadow integration requires creating conscious channels for expression of previously rejected energies. Here's how to apply this. 1. Select shadow quality. Select one shadow quality you're beginning to understand. 2. Identify constructive channels. Identify 3 constructive ways this energy could be expressed in your life, if consciously channeled. 3. Create expression opportunity. Create one opportunity this week to consciously express this quality in a chosen, constructive way. For example, anger might become boundary setting, assertiveness, or protection of the vulnerable. Desire might become creative passion, appreciation of beauty, or deepened intimacy. Remember those confounding patterns in your life? The repeated conflicts, the self-sabotage, the emotional reactions that seem to come from nowhere. As you develop a conscious relationship with your shadow, something remarkable happens. The energy that was once expressed as projection, self-sabotage, or emotional reactivity becomes available as authentic power, creativity, and choice. This transformation follows a profound principle Jung understood. First comes the courage to face what you've denied. Then comes the power of being whole. This transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more completely who you already are. The shadow contains not alien intrusions, but disowned aspects of your own humanity. When consciously integrated, these aspects don't dominate your personality. They enrich it with depth, authenticity, and previously inaccessible resources. The most profound shift is from being unconsciously driven to consciously choosing. The shadow doesn't disappear through integration, nor should it. Instead, your relationship with it changes from unconscious acting out to conscious expression. You gain the freedom to channel its energy in service of your highest values rather than in opposition to them. Jung recognized that this process reveals a deeper order. In all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Carl Jung. The measure of psychological maturity isn't the absence of shadow qualities, but the conscious integration of the full spectrum of human experience. As Jung understood, wholeness doesn't come from identifying only with our best qualities. It comes from embracing the complete range of our humanity with awareness and compassion. What if Jung's warning wasn't merely cautionary, but an invitation to a more authentic and powerful way of being? What if the shadow isn't your enemy, but the repository of your unclaimed wholeness? What if the very qualities you've feared most contain precisely the energy you need to become more fully alive? Jung's insight about personal transformation captures this perfectly. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. Carl Jung. What if the choice isn't between being good or bad, but between being fragmented or whole? The journey of shadow integration isn't completed in a day. It's a lifelong process of becoming increasingly conscious of the full spectrum of your humanity. This process transforms not just how you see yourself, but how you experience every aspect of your life. Today, take one small step. Perhaps note one emotional trigger and ask what it might reveal about a disowned aspect of yourself. Or identify one quality you tend to judge harshly in others and consider how it might exist in you. Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate the shadow. It's to transform your relationship with it from unconscious denial to conscious integration. You are never meant to be only half of yourself. You are meant to be whole. And that wholeness includes everything you've learned to reject. If you're watching this and recognizing shadow patterns in your own life, I want you to know something important. The parts of yourself you've rejected aren't defects. They're essential aspects of your wholeness, awaiting integration. And developing a conscious relationship with them doesn't make you worse. It makes you free. If this exploration of the shadow self has helped you see something you've been struggling to name, share this video with someone else who might be facing similar inner conflicts. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos that help you understand yourself at a deeper level and take your personal power back. And in the comments, tell me what part of your shadow you've been avoiding lately. Your truth might give someone else the permission they need to face theirs. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside, as fate. Carl Jung.